An exciting story of redemption, love, passion, and new beginnings. She slapped him in front of everyone. He pulled her close and kissed her as if the world was ending. 12 years of silence exploded in that moment, and nothing would ever be the same again. Watch this story until the end. You'll be surprised by this tale. If you enjoy love stories and romance, subscribe to this channel, leave your comment. We post videos like this every day. Continuing. The ballroom of the Plaza Hotel buzzed with important people. Jessica Martin adjusted the black dress she had, bought at a vintage shop in Chelsea, and tried not to feel like an imposter. It wasn't the first time she'd attended events like this. Her work as a restorer of religious artifacts took her to sophisticated places, important museums, art auctions. But tonight was different. Tonight, she knew he would be there. Michael Winters had returned to New York 3 weeks ago. The news had circulated through the papers with the practiced discretion of Manhattan's elite. Winters' heir returns to take over family business after patriarch's death. Few lines, no photo. As if 12 years in London were just an extended vacation. Jessica held her champagne glass more tightly than necessary. She shouldn't be here. She should have declined the foundation's invitation, made up some excuse, pretended she had a tight deadline to deliver the restoration of some Baroque altarpiece. But she couldn't. For 12 years she had prepared for this moment, and now that it had finally arrived, her legs felt weak like a teenager's. Jessica? Jessica Martin. She turned and came face to face with Margaret Taylor, director of one of New York's leading museums of sacred art. An elegant woman with grey hair, pulled back in an impeccable bun, who always treated Jessica with respectful cordiality. "What a surprise to find you here," said Margaret, approaching with a smile. "I didn't know you attended Heritage Foundation events." "I received an invitation to represent the studio," Jessica responded, trying to sound casual. "It seems they're interested in expanding their collection of religious art." "Ah, of course. The Foundation's new project." Margaret lowered her voice as if sharing a secret. "They say Michael Winters is going to transform the family mansion into a cultural center. You know the house, don't you? It's an architectural gem." Jessica almost choked on her champagne. She knew the house. She knew every room, every staircase, every garden. She had spent 3 years of her life walking those corridors, reading under the oak tree in the backyard, listening to piano in the music room. She had been happy in that house, happier than she had ever been anywhere else. "I know it in passing," she lied. "Well, if the project gets off the ground, perhaps you'll have the chance to work there. They say the Winters collection of religious art is exceptional." Margaret paused, looking around. "Speaking of which, he's here today, Michael Winters. Arrived a short while ago." Jessica's heart raced. She scanned the room with her eyes, trying to appear disinterested, but feeling every muscle in her body on alert. And then she saw him. He was near the window overlooking Central Park, talking with a group of older men, all in dark suits. 12 years had passed, but she would have recognized him anywhere, under any circumstances. His brown hair now had grey streaks at the temples. His face was more angular, marked by maturity, but his eyes remained the same, grey like a rainy afternoon, as intense as she remembered. Michael Winters at 34 was even more imposing than he had been at 22. The tailored suit accentuated his broad shoulders. His posture was straight, confident. He gesticulated as he spoke, and Jessica remembered how those hands used to touch her face, how those fingers used to intertwine with her hair. "Impressive, isn't he?" Margaret's voice brought her back to reality. "They say he's become one of the most respected executives in London, transformed a family mining company into an international conglomerate." Jessica nodded vaguely, unable to look away. As if feeling the weight of her gaze, Michael raised his head and his eyes met hers across the room. Time stopped. The buzz of conversations became a distant noise. For a second that seemed eternal, they simply stared at each other. His face showed no surprise. It was as if he knew she would be there, as if he had been waiting for this moment as much as she had. Jessica felt a wave of heat rise up her neck. All the words she had rehearsed for 12 years, all the things she would like to say to him, evaporated. All that remained was the painful memory of the day he simply disappeared, leaving behind only a cold note saying he needed to travel and that maybe it was better this way. Michael said something to the men he was talking with and began walking toward her. Each step seemed to echo in Jessica's chest. She had the impulse to flee, but her legs wouldn't obey. "Excuse me, Margaret," he said as he approached, greeting the museum director with practiced politeness. "May I steal Jessica for a few minutes?" Margaret looked from one to the other, clearly intrigued by the familiarity of the treatment, but nodded discreetly. "Of course, Jessica, we'll talk later." And then they were alone, surrounded by hundreds of people, but completely isolated in their own bubble of tension. "Jessica," he said, and the way he pronounced her name made something tighten in her chest. It was the same intonation as always, loaded with an intimacy that time had not erased. "Michael." She forced herself to sound cold, distant, professional. He studied her for a moment, as if cataloguing every change in her face. "You look beautiful." "Don't come at me with cheap pleasantries," she shot back, surprising herself with the harshness of her own voice. "What do you want?" A cynical smile curved his lips. "Straight to the point. You've always been that way." "I learned that wasting time with small talk is for people who have time to waste." The words came out sharper than she intended. Michael took a sip of the whiskey he was holding. "I heard you've become a respected restorer, religious art specifically. Interesting change of direction." "People change, Michael. They grow. They move on." Each word was a deliberate jab. "Do they really?" He took a step closer, and Jessica caught his scent, woody, masculine, disturbingly familiar. "Because from what I see, you're still exactly the same, reckless as always." The word hit like a slap. Reckless. That's what he used to call her when they were young, when she insisted on taking unnecessary risks, when she defied social conventions by dating the winter's air while being only the seamstress's daughter. Jessica's hand moved before she could think. The slap echoed through the ballroom like thunder. Conversation stopped. Crystal glasses clinked, all eyes turned to them. Michael didn't back down. On the contrary, his eyes flared with an intensity she knew very well. It was the same expression he had when they used to argue, when the passion between them overflowed into violent discussions that always ended the same way. In a sudden movement, he pulled her by the waist, bringing her close. "Still has fire," he murmured against her lips, and then he kissed her. It wasn't a romantic kiss, it was brutal, desperate, loaded with 12 years of anger and longing, a kiss that tasted of grief and vengeance. Jessica tried to pull away, but her body betrayed her mind. Her hands clutched the lapel of his suit. Her lips responded with the same fury. For a few seconds they lost themselves in each other, oblivious to the scandal they were causing, oblivious to the whispers and camera flashes. It was as if the 12 years of separation had dissolved, as if it was only yesterday that he had left her. When they finally separated, both were breathless. The ballroom had exploded into a buzz of whispered comments. Jessica saw from the corners of her eyes people filming with their phones. "You've completely lost your mind," she whispered, her cheeks burning with shame and anger. Michael released her slowly, but his eyes didn't leave hers. "Perhaps, but you responded. That doesn't mean anything. It means everything." He straightened his tie with a calm she found irritating. "And you know it." Jessica took a step back, trying to regain her composure. People were still looking at them, but pretending not to look. It was the kind of elegant embarrassment of Manhattan high society. "I'm leaving," she said, grabbing her purse. "No, you're not." Michael gently held her arm. "Because you need to know why I came back." "I'm not interested." "My father died, Jessica." She stopped. William Winters had been an imposing figure throughout her youth, a severe man of few words who had always looked at her with barely disguised disapproval. Not that she cared about his opinion, but the news caught her off guard. "I'm sorry," she said, and the sincerity in her voice surprised her. Michael nodded. "It was a month ago, massive heart attack, and with him I discovered that the family's fortune is a farce. We're completely in debt. Fraud, phantom loans, non-existent investments. My father spent decades building a facade of wealth while sinking everything my mother had built. Jessica stared at him, processing the information. The Winters family in financial difficulties was almost inconceivable. They were the definition of old money in New York City. And what does that have to do with me? I'm going to transform the mansion into a cultural center. It's the only way to salvage something from the wreckage. I'll donate the property to a foundation in exchange for debt relief. He paused. And I need someone to handle the curation, someone specialized in religious art. Jessica laughed, but there was no humor in it. You're crazy if you think I'm going to work for you. It wouldn't be working for me, it would be working against me if you prefer. I'm sure you'd love the opportunity to see the Winters family being dismantled piece by piece. The offer was tempting, she had to admit. The Winters collection was legendary. Working with those pieces would be any restorer's dream. But working with Michael? Why me, she asked. Because you're the best at what you do, and because, he hesitated for the first time in the conversation, because you know the house, you know the story behind each piece. She did know. She knew by heart every painting, every sculpture, every architectural detail. She had spent hours listening to Elizabeth Winters, Michael's mother, tell the stories behind each acquisition. Mrs. Winters had always treated her like a daughter, with an affection Jessica had never forgotten. Your mother, she began, died 5 years ago, cancer. His voice got lower. She always asked about you, even after I got married. The word married hit Jessica like a punch. She knew, of course. She had read it in the society columns. Michael Winters had married Heather Bennett, heiress to a family of mining magnates in a discreet ceremony in London. Knowing and hearing from him were completely different things. And your wife? What does she think of this generous offer of yours? Michael took another sip of his whiskey before answering. Heather and I divorced 2 years ago. Jessica didn't know how to feel about this information. Part of her felt a petty satisfaction, another part just sadness. Listen, Michael continued, I know I have a lot to explain. I know I owe you explanations I never gave, but this is bigger than the two of us. It's about preserving a legacy, about doing something important with what's left. And you think I should help because of what? Our glorious past? No, you should help because it's the right thing to do, and because deep down, you still care about that house as much as I do. He was right, and that irritated her deeply. The Winters mansion had been her refuge during the 3 happiest years of her life. It was there that she had discovered her passion for religious art, leafing through the books in the library, observing the works from the family's private collection. I need to think, she finally said. Of course. But don't take too long. The lawyers are pushing to liquidate everything quickly. Jessica nodded and began to walk away, but Michael called her again. Jessica! She turned. It was good to see you. There was something in his voice, a vulnerability she didn't expect to find. For a moment he was no longer the successful businessman, the Winters heir. He was just the 22-year-old young man she had loved, with all the intensity of someone who loves for the first time. It wasn't good for me, she lied, and left the ballroom without looking back. Outside the hotel, the night air was heavy, with humidity. Jessica walked to the sidewalk overlooking the park and stood there for a few minutes, listening to the sounds of the city, trying to process everything that had happened. 12 years. 12 years preparing for this moment, imagining what she would say, how she would react. And in the end, one look was all it took for all the defenses she had built to begin to crumble. She pulled her cell phone from her purse and dialed her best friend's number. Rachel, it's me. I need to talk to you. No, I'm not okay. I ran into Michael. On the other end of the line, Rachel made a sound of astonishment. Wow, Jess, how was it? A disaster. A complete disaster. Jessica ran her hand through her hair. And I think I'm going to accept his proposal. What proposal? It's a long story. Can I come over? Of course. I'll make coffee. While waiting for the taxi, Jessica looked once more at the hotel. Through the ballroom window, she could see the silhouettes of people still talking. Michael was probably still there, dealing with the consequences of the scandal they had caused. Tomorrow, their photo would be in all the papers. The seamstress's daughter, and the last winters, or something equally sensational. Manhattan's elite loved this kind of drama, but as much as she tried to convince herself that she cared about the scandal, Jessica knew there was something much more dangerous at stake. During those few minutes in the ballroom, during that devastating kiss, she had felt something she thought was dead and buried. She still loved Michael Winters. After 12 years, 3 serious relationships and an established career, she still loved the man who had abandoned her without explanation. And this, she knew, would destroy her again. The taxi arrived and she got in, giving Rachel's address in Greenwich Village. As the car pulled away from the sidewalk, she saw Michael leaving the hotel. He stopped on the sidewalk and looked in the direction of the taxi, as if he knew she was there. For a second, she thought about asking the driver to stop, thought about getting out and running back, about demanding the explanations she deserved, about screaming everything she had kept inside for 12 years, but she did none of that. She just closed her eyes and let the car take her away, as she had done so many times before. Some wounds, she thought, were too old to heal, and some people too dangerous to forgive. Rachel's apartment in Greenwich Village smelled of freshly brewed coffee and scented candles. Jessica threw herself on the beige linen sofa and buried her face in her hands. She could still taste Michael's kiss on her lips, could still smell his scent on her skin. "Tell me everything," said Rachel, extending a steaming cup of coffee. "And don't spare me the sordid details." Rachel Cooper was a psychologist, divorced, mother of 2 teenage children, and the only person in the world who knew the whole truth about Jessica's relationship with Michael. They had met in college, and since then, Rachel had functioned as Jessica's conscience, therapist, and best friend. "He kissed me in front of everyone, Rach. In front of everyone." Jessica shook her head, still in disbelief. "And I responded. Like an idiot, I responded." "And how was it?" "How was what?" "The kiss, obviously." Jessica gave her friend a look of reproach. "Seriously?" "Well, it's been 12 years, Jess. It's relevant information for analyzing the case." Jessica sighed and took a sip of coffee. "It was as if time hadn't passed, as if I was still that 20-year-old girl who believed in happy endings." "And that scares you?" "It terrifies me." Jessica got up and went to the window overlooking the street. Even at night, Greenwich Village buzzed with life. 12 years, Rach. For 12 years I convinced myself I was over it, that it was just a youthful passion, that I had grown up, that I had other interests, other values. And discovered you were lying to yourself. Discovered I'm an idiot." Jessica rested her forehead on the cool glass of the window. "He offered me a job, curating the family's collection, wants to transform the mansion into a cultural center." Rachel almost spit out her coffee. "The Winters mansion, that mansion?" "That very one." "My God, Jess, you can't accept. It's pure masochism. It's the opportunity of my career." Jessica turned to face her friend. "The Winters collection is legendary. It has pieces from the 17th century, works that have never been properly catalogued. It would be my dream project." "It would be your personal nightmare." "Maybe both." Rachel got up and went to her. "Jess, listen to me. You spent 12 years rebuilding yourself. 12 years creating an independent life, a solid career, an identity that doesn't revolve around him. You want to throw all that away?" "I'm not throwing anything away. It's just work." "Just work? In the mansion where you lived together? Restoring the pieces his mother collected, being with him every day?" Rachel shook her head. "That's not work, it's self-flagellation." Jessica knew her friend was right, but there was something she couldn't explain, an almost physical need to return to that place, to touch those pieces again, to walk those corridors, as if only then could she understand what had really happened between them. "He said he's divorced." "Ah, so that's it." Rachel crossed her arms. "You think now you'll have a happy ending? That 12 years of silence will be resolved with a cultural center? That's not it, isn't it? Then explain to me what it is." Jessica went back to the sofa and sat down, pulling her legs under her body. I need answers, Rach. I need to understand why he simply disappeared. Why he never gave me an explanation. Why he left me feeling like I was worth nothing. And you think you'll find those answers working with him? I don't know, but I know I won't be able to move on until I understand. Rachel sighed and sat down beside her. Jess, sometimes there are no answers. Sometimes people just make selfish choices and that's it. Michael wasn't selfish. The Michael you knew at 20. People change. I know, but... Jessica paused, trying to put into words something she didn't even fully understand herself. There was something in his eyes today, a sadness I had never seen before, as if he too were carrying some burden. Guilty conscience, perhaps. Maybe. Or maybe there's more to the story than I know. They were silent for a few minutes, listening to the noise of traffic below and the distant sound of music coming from some bar on the street. If you accept, Rachel finally said, promise you won't lose yourself in him again. Promise you'll keep the focus on work? Jessica nodded, but they both knew it was an impossible promise to keep. Her cell phone vibrated, a message from an unknown number. Thank you for considering the proposal. The decision is yours, but know that it would be an honor to work with you again. Michael. She showed the message to Rachel, who rolled her eyes. He doesn't waste time. It's just politeness. Jess, for God's sake, the man kissed you in front of half of New York 2 hours ago. That's not politeness, it's strategy. Jessica turned off the phone without responding. She wasn't ready to talk to Michael by message. She wasn't ready for the intimacy that digital communication inevitably created. The next morning, she woke, up to her phone ringing insistently. It was Amy, her assistant at the studio. Jessica, have you seen the papers? What papers? All of them. You're on the cover of 3. The kiss that stopped Manhattan's elite. Forbidden romance, the seamstress. And the millionaire. Scandal at the Plaza Hotel. Jessica groaned and got out of bed. How awful. There's more. The studio's phone won't stop ringing. Journalists wanting interviews, clients asking if it's true, curious people wanting details. I'm coming over. Maybe it's better if you stay home today. There are paparazzi at the door of the building. Jessica ran to the window. Indeed, there were 2 men with professional cameras standing on the sidewalk in front of her building. What a nightmare. Jessica, is it true, you and Michael Winters? It's a long story, Amy, very long. After hanging up, she went to the kitchen and made coffee, trying not to think about the newspapers. But curiosity got the better of her. She opened her laptop and searched for the news online. The photos were devastating. The exact moment when she slapped him, the expression of fury on her face, the intensity in his eyes. And then, the kiss. A kiss that seemed torn from a drama film, loaded with passion and desperation. The article in the sensationalist newspaper was particularly cruel. Jessica Martin, 32, daughter of the late seamstress Grace Martin, was seen again in the company of Michael Winters after 12 years of separation. The romance between the two was a scandal in the past decade, when the young woman of humble origin conquered the heart of the heir to one of New York's most traditional families. The relationship ended abruptly when Winters traveled to London and married Heather Bennett. Last night at the Heritage Foundation benefit event, the two were the protagonists of a scene that left those present open-mouthed. Jessica closed the laptop with more force than necessary. She hated the way the press reduced her life to sensationalist headlines. Daughter of the seamstress, as if her origin were an indelible mark, something that defined her forever. Her mother, Grace, had been much more than a seamstress. She was a cultured woman who read voraciously, who taught Jessica to love books and art. She worked for rich families not for lack of options, but because she was proud of her own talent. Her clothes were true works of art, sought after by Manhattan's elite. That's how Jessica met the Winters. Her mother had been hired to make Elizabeth Winters' trousseau when she got married. The friendship between the two women was born from this professional relationship and extended for years. Elizabeth always treated Grace as an equal, and when Jessica began to accompany her mother on visits to the mansion. She was received as part of the family. The relationship with Michael had been natural, inevitable. They were the same age, had the same passion for books, the same intensity. For 3 years they were inseparable. He introduced her to his friends as his girlfriend, took her on trips, openly talked about marriage. And then, out of nowhere, everything ended. The phone rang again. This time it was a number she recognized, the law office that handled the studio's legal matters. Mr. Harris? Jessica, good morning. Sorry to bother you, but I received an interesting call this morning. A certain James Davis, lawyer for the Winters family. He would like to schedule a meeting with you to discuss a job offer. Jessica held the phone more tightly. Michael was acting fast. What kind of offer? Curation of a collection of religious art. It seems to be a big project, well paid. Do you have any information about this? I'm considering the possibility. Well, if you're interested, the meeting would be this afternoon at 3 o'clock in his office. Can I confirm? Jessica looked out the window. The paparazzi was still there. Hiding in the apartment wouldn't solve anything. Sooner or later, she would have to face the situation. Confirm it. At 2:30 in the afternoon, she left the building through the garage, avoiding the photographers. The law office was in downtown Manhattan, in one of the commercial towers, on Wall Street. Everything very formal, very impersonal. James Davis was a middle-aged man, graying hair, impeccable suit, the type of lawyer New York's elite used to. Discreetly solve problems. Ms. Martin, it's a pleasure to meet you. Your work is very respected. Thank you. They sat in a meeting room with a view of the East River. James opened a folder and removed some documents. I'll be direct. The Winters. Family is going through a delicate period. The patriarch's death revealed a complicated financial situation. Mr. Michael has decided to donate the family mansion to a cultural foundation as a way to preserve the historical heritage and pay off part of the debts. I understand. For this, he needs someone to properly curate the collection, especially the religious art pieces. Your name was indicated as the best professional for the job. Jessica nodded, maintaining a neutral expression. And what would be the scope of the project? Complete cataloging of the collection, restoration of the pieces that need it, organization of future exhibitions. The work would be carried out in the mansion itself, which will undergo renovations to become a cultural center. The estimated time frame is 2 years. 2 years. 2 years working in the mansion, living with Michael, dealing with memories at every corner. The remuneration would be commensurate with the importance of the project, continued James, sliding a paper toward her. The amount in the proposal was generous, more than generous. It was almost double what she usually charged for similar projects. Why so much? Because it's an urgent and complex job, and because Mr. Michael insists that it be done by the best professional available. Jessica studied the documents for a few minutes. Everything seemed legitimate, well-structured, but there was something that bothered her. And Mr. Winters, will he be involved in the project? Minimally. He has other business to resolve. The idea is for you to have total autonomy for the work. Total autonomy. That meant that Michael was trying to make things easier for her, removing his own presence from the equation. On the one hand, it was a relief. On the other, it was vaguely frustrating. Can I visit the mansion before giving a definitive answer? Of course. How about tomorrow morning? Mr. Michael can receive you at 10 o'clock. Jessica nodded. Perfect. Leaving the office, she stopped at a nearby cafe and called Rachel. So, how was it? Too professional? Too formal? It doesn't seem like Michael was involved in the preparation. Maybe he's trying to keep his distance. It would be sensible. It would be. Jessica stirred her coffee distractedly. I'm going to visit the mansion tomorrow. Jess, I know what you're going to say, but I need to see the condition of the pieces. I need to assess the work that will be necessary. What you need is therapy. Maybe that too. The next morning, Jessica woke up with the feeling that she was about to make the biggest mistake of her life, or take the most important decision, maybe both. She wore jeans, a white shirt, and comfortable boots, work clothes, nothing that could be interpreted as an attempt to impress. She tied her hair in a low ponytail and applied only a discreet lipstick. The Winters mansion was located in the Upper East Side, on one of the most charming streets in the neighborhood. A 19th-century construction, eclectic style, painted light, yellow with white details, spacious gardens, centuries-old oak trees, privileged view of Central Park. Jessica parked her car in front of the gate and stood for a few minutes just looking. 12 years had passed, but the house was exactly as she remembered. The same wrought-iron fence, the same wooden windows painted green, the same decadent charm of New York's aristocracy. She took a deep breath and rang the bell. Michael opened the gate personally. He was wearing jeans and a polo shirt, more casual than she expected. His hair was slightly disheveled, as if he had run his hands through it many times. Punctual as always, he said with a half smile. Professional habit. They walked through the garden in silence. Jessica noticed that the lawn was a bit overgrown. The plants in the flower beds needed care. The house remained imposing, but there was an air of abandonment that didn't exist before. "It's different," she commented. "Dad wasn't very interested in maintenance in the last few years. Said it was a waste of money." Michael opened the main door, and they entered the entrance hall. The smell of the house hit Jessica like a wave of memories. The smell of antique furniture, of dried flowers, of old books. The smell of a house inhabited for generations. "Wow," she murmured, looking around. The hall was exactly as she remembered. The marble floor with geometric designs, the curved staircase that led to the second floor, the crystal chandelier that Elizabeth Winters had brought from a trip to France. On the walls, the same paintings, landscapes of old New York, family portraits, some smaller religious art pieces. "The living room," Michael said, opening a door on the right. Jessica entered and had to lean on the doorframe. It was as if time had stopped. The same decoration, the same furniture, even the same books on the shelves, the leather armchairs where she used to sit, to read, the center table where Elizabeth served tea on Sunday afternoons, the grand piano where Michael played for her. "You haven't changed anything," Mom insisted. Said this room was perfect as it was. Jessica walked to the bookshelf and ran her fingers over the spines, the same titles she knew by heart. Hemingway, Fitzgerald, Plath, and the art books that Elizabeth collected, museum catalogues from Europe, studies on American Baroque, artist biographies. "She continued buying religious art books even after you left," Michael said behind her. "Said that one day you would return to read them." The simple phrase hit Jessica hard. She closed her eyes for a moment, trying to control her emotion. "She always believed you would make up," he continued, his voice lower. "Why did you never tell me she had died?" Michael was silent for so long that Jessica thought he wasn't going to answer. "Because I didn't know how, because I didn't know if you would want to know, because—" he hesitated. "Because I knew that if I contacted you, I wouldn't be able to keep my distance." Jessica turned to face him. "And why was it important to keep your distance?" "Jessica, no, I want to understand. Why was it so important to keep your distance that you preferred to let me find out through the internet that the woman who treated me like a daughter had died?" Michael ran his hand through his hair. "Because I was married, because I didn't have the right to enter your life again, just because I was suffering. But you could enter my life to offer me work. That's different. Is it? How?" "Because now I'm no longer married. Because now—" he paused. "Because now, maybe I have the right to be selfish." The brutal sincerity of the response left Jessica speechless. Michael had approached her during the conversation, and now they were very close to each other, surrounded by books and memories. "Let's see the collection," she said, taking a step back. Michael nodded and led her out of the room. They climbed the familiar staircase, passed through the corridors she knew by heart, until they reached what used to be William Winters' office and now functioned as an improvised storage for the art pieces. Jessica opened the door and gasped. There were paintings stacked against the walls, sculptures covered by sheets, boxes, and more boxes of various objects, an organized chaos that screamed for professional care. My God, she murmured, entering the room. It's worse than it looks, or better, depending on the point of view. Jessica approached one of the piles of paintings and began to examine them carefully. There were extraordinary pieces there. Baroque saints from the 18th century, colonial paintings, liturgical objects of inestimable value. Michael, this is a treasure, a collection worth a fortune. That's what I was hoping to hear. She continued examining the pieces, losing herself in the work. This was what she loved to do, discover stories behind objects, understand the artist's technique, imagine the hands that had created those works centuries ago. Michael observed her in silence, leaning on the doorframe. There was something hypnotic about the way she worked, her absolute concentration, the delicacy with which she touched each piece. This Madonna, she said, holding a small wooden sculpture, is from the 17th century. Look at the work on the details of the mantle, the expression on the face. It's a masterpiece. Mom always said you had a special eye for these things. Jessica smiled, and for the first time since she arrived, she seemed to completely relax. Your mother taught me to see. She taught me that each piece has a story, that our function is not just to preserve the object, but to preserve the memory it carries. She would be happy to know you're here. I'm also happy to be here. The phrase came out before she could censor it. Michael approached. Does that mean you accept the proposal? Jessica looked around at all those pieces that needed care, that needed someone who understood their value, looked at Michael, at the man who had broken her heart, but who still made her feel things she thought were dead. I accept, she said, but with conditions. Which ones? No conversations about the past, no attempts at explanation. We're here because of the work, only because of that. Michael nodded. Agreed. And I work alone. I don't need supervision. Understood. And if at any point I feel the situation is unbearable, I leave. No notice, no explanations. Fair. Jessica extended her hand. Then we have an agreement. Michael shook her hand, and the simple touch was like an electric shock. For a second, neither of them moved. Welcome back, Jessica, he said, and she knew with a certainty that frightened her that she was making the biggest mistake of her life. Jessica arrived at the mansion the following Monday at 8 in the morning, carrying 2 bags of professional equipment and an iron determination to keep the focus only on work. She had spent the entire weekend mentally preparing, creating strategies to deal with the memories that would inevitably emerge at every corner of that house. Michael opened the gate wearing dark jeans and a light blue dress shirt with the sleeves rolled up. He seemed to have slept little. There were discreet dark circles under his grey eyes and his hair was slightly disheveled. Good morning, he said, helping her with the bags. Coffee? Thank you. I already had some at home. A lie. She was too nervous to eat or drink anything since she had woken up at 5 in the morning. But accepting coffee would mean sitting at the kitchen table with him, and that seemed dangerously intimate for the first day of work. I installed a large table in the office for you to use as a base, Michael said as they walked through the garden. And I had a small safe installed to store the most valuable pieces during the cataloguing process. Perfect. The professional tone she managed to give her voice sounded fake even to her own ears, but Michael didn't comment on it. In the office, she found an impeccable workbench, LED magnifying glass, rulers, cotton gloves, specific cleaning materials for religious art, computer with cataloguing software already installed. Michael had thought of every detail. Impressive, she admitted, examining the equipment. Where did you get all this so quickly? I have my contacts. He leaned on the doorframe, watching as she organized her own materials. Anything specific you need? For now it's perfect. I'll start by doing a general inventory, then move on to detailed cataloguing. She pulled up a chair and sat down, opening her laptop. How long do you have to stay here today? The question sounded more direct than she intended. Michael raised an eyebrow. Do you need me to leave? It's not that. It's just that... She hesitated, looking for the right words. I need to concentrate, and your presence is distracting. A slow smile spread across his face. Distracting? You know what I meant. I do, and it's good to know that you at least admit that I'm still capable of distracting you. Jessica gave him a severe look. Michael. All right, all right. He raised his hands in surrender. I'm going to the office downtown. I have a meeting with the lawyers anyway. Make yourself at home. Thank you. But Jessica, he stopped at the door. If you need anything, my cell is always on. After he left, she stayed silent for a few minutes, listening to the sound of the car moving away. Only then did she realize she had been holding her breath. Focus on the work, she told herself. That's all that matters. She began with the first pile of paintings, photographing each piece before examining it in detail. The first was an 18th century saint portrait, oil on wood, in excellent condition. The second showed signs of flaking paint that would require careful intervention. Gradually, she lost herself in the familiar rhythm of work. Each piece was a discovery, a small window to the past. There were Baroque saint sculptures with expressions of touching humanity, colonial paintings of refined technique, liturgical objects crafted in silver and gold. Around noon, she took a break for lunch. She had brought a sandwich from home, but decided to eat it in the garden, under the shade of the oak tree where she used to read when she was young. The tree was larger, more leafy, but the stone bench was still there. Jessica sat down and closed her eyes, letting the warm afternoon breeze caress her face. For a moment she managed to pretend she was 20 again, that Michael would appear at any moment with a new book to show her, that the future was still a blank page full of possibilities. The sound of footsteps on the gravel made her open her eyes, but it wasn't Michael. It was a middle-aged woman, grey hair tied in a bun, wearing a housekeeper's uniform. Sorry to bother you, miss. Are you the new restorer? Jessica stood up. I am. Jessica Martin. Ah, Miss Jessica. The woman's face lit up. I'm Martha. I've been working here for 15 years. Mrs. Elizabeth used to talk a lot about you. Martha. Jessica vaguely remembered. Her, a younger woman at the time who worked in the kitchen on weekends. Martha, it's good to meet you. How are things around here? The woman's expression became more serious. Difficult, Miss Jessica, very difficult. After Mr. William died, everything turned upside down. Young Mr. Michael tries to solve things, but... She shook her head. There are a lot of strange things happening. Strange like what? Martha looked around as if to make sure they were alone. After young Mr. Michael arrived from London, strange people started showing up here. Lawyers, investigators, people who go through Mr. William's papers. And there are some letters that Mrs. Elizabeth hid before she died. Letters? Yes. Ma'am, she made me promise that if you ever came back, I would tell you where they are kept. Martha lowered her voice even more. She said they were important, that they explained a lot of what happened in the past. Jessica's heart raced. Where are these letters? In the library, behind the shelf of art books. There's a secret compartment that only Mrs. Elizabeth and I knew about. She said it was for you, that only you would understand. Before Jessica could ask more questions, the sound of a car arriving interrupted them. Michael had returned. Don't tell young Mr. Michael anything, Martha said quickly. Mrs. Elizabeth was very clear. The letters were only for you. The woman hurried away, and seconds later, Michael appeared in the garden. How was your morning? He asked, seeming genuinely interested. Productive. The collection is even more impressive than I imagined. Jessica tried to sound natural, but her mind was racing, thinking about the mysterious letters. Great. I brought Chinese food, in case you're interested. The smell of the food made her stomach growl. The sandwich she had brought remained untouched, next to the bench. Actually, I am hungry, she admitted. They ate in the kitchen, sitting at the wooden table where Elizabeth used to serve snacks in the late afternoon. Michael told her about the meeting with the lawyers. The family's financial situation was worse than he had imagined, but the Cultural Center project was moving forward. There's interest from some companies in sponsoring, he said, and the City-approved tax incentives. If all goes well, we'll be able to keep the mansion and still create something important for the city. And if it doesn't go well? Michael was silent for a moment. Then we lose everything. The house, the collection, the memories, everything. The sadness in his voice was palpable. Jessica realized that, despite all the resentment she felt, she didn't want to see Michael lose the house where he had grown up. That house was part of his history, just as it had been part of her history for 3 years. "It won't happen," she said impulsively. "We'll make it." Michael looked at her, surprised. "We will?" Jessica realized what she had said and felt her face heat up. "I meant, the project will work. I'm sure." "I hope so." He got up and began collecting the plates. "I'll let you work in peace. I have some calls to make." Back in the office, Jessica tried to concentrate on the cataloging, but Martha's words echoed in her mind. Letters that Elizabeth had hidden specifically for her. Letters that explained a lot of what happened in the past. Around 4 in the afternoon, she could no longer resist. She left the office and went to the library. The room was exactly as she remembered. Dark wood shelves from floor to ceiling, leather armchair by the window, antique desk where Elizabeth used to write correspondence. The smell of old books and waxed furniture was the same as always. Jessica headed for the shelf of art books that Martha had mentioned. It was a section she knew well. She had spent hours there, leafing through catalogues and studies on religious art. She carefully examined the shelves until she noticed that one of them seemed slightly different from the others. She pressed the wood at some points until she heard a discreet click. A small compartment opened, revealing a yellowed envelope. With her heart racing, she took the envelope. It was addressed in Elizabeth's elegant handwriting. "For Jessica, with all my love and my hope that one day the truth will be known." Her hands trembled as she opened the envelope. Inside were 3 folded letters and a small golden key. The first letter was dated 5 years ago. "My dear Jessica, if you are reading this, it means you have finally come home. Yes, this was always your home, even after Michael left so abruptly. You need to know the truth about what happened. My husband, William, forced Michael to leave New York. He threatened to commit me to a psychiatric clinic if he didn't break up with you and marry Heather Bennett. At the time, I was going through a deep depression. You remember how sad I was in the last months before Michael's trip. William used my fragility as a weapon. He told Michael that I would go completely mad if the scandal of a marriage with the seamstress's daughter destroyed our reputation. Michael believed it. He was young, he was in love, but he was also a good son. He chose to protect me. What William didn't tell is that my depression had nothing to do with you or your relationship. It had to do with the terrible things I was discovering about the family's business. Jessica had to stop reading. Her hands were shaking so much she could barely hold the paper. 12 years believing that Michael had abandoned her out of shame, out of self-interest, out of cowardice, and the truth was completely different. She took a deep breath and continued. Michael never knew that I discovered his father's plan. He never knew that I would have stood by him, that I would have fought for both of you. William manipulated me as much as he manipulated my son. In the second letter, you will find details about the crimes William committed over the years. Fraud, tax evasion, illegal loans. The Winters family fortune was built on lies, and now Michael is paying the price. The third letter is from Michael. He wrote it the night before traveling to London, but never had the courage to deliver it. I've kept it for 12 years, waiting for the day when you would meet again. The key opens a safe in my room. Inside are documents that can save Michael from the financial ruin his father left. Documents that prove that some of the debts are fraudulent, contracted without Michael's knowledge. My dear, I know I'm asking a lot. I know that the hurt you feel is deep and justified. But I also know that you still love my son as much as he still loves you. I saw it in his eyes during all these years. I saw it in the way he never managed to talk about you without his voice trembling. I hope you find in your heart the capacity to forgive. Not William, who doesn't deserve forgiveness. Not me, who should have been stronger, but Michael, who sacrificed his own happiness to protect those he loved. With eternal love, Elizabeth Winters. Jessica let the letter fall in her lap and sat in silence for several minutes. Everything she had believed for 12 years had crumbled in a matter of minutes. Michael hadn't abandoned her out of shame or ambition. He had sacrificed his own love to protect his mother. With still trembling hands, she opened the second letter. It was a detailed account of William Winters' crimes: shell companies, offshore accounts, overpriced contracts, bribes to politicians. A network of corruption that spanned decades. The third letter was from Michael, written in a younger, less confident handwriting. My beloved Jessica, when you read this, I will already be far away. I know you will hate me. I know you will think I am a coward, that I didn't fight for our love, and maybe you're right. I can't explain why I'm leaving, because it would involve other people who are not to blame for anything. I can only say that this is the hardest decision of my life, and that I will carry it as a wound that never heals. I know I'm being selfish by writing this letter. I know it would be easier for you if I simply disappeared without a trace. But I can't leave without telling you how much you mean to me. You were the only person who really knew me, the only one who loved me for who I was, not for what I represented. With you, I was just Michael, not the Winters heir, not the respected businessman's son. I was just a man in love. I keep every moment we lived together. The way you wrinkled your nose when you were concentrated reading, how you hummed softly when you thought no one was listening, the way your eyes sparkled when you discovered some new detail in a work of art. I will carry your memory wherever I go. And if one day fate gives us a second chance, I hope to have enough courage to be the man you deserve. I love you today. I will always love you. Michael. The tears Jessica had held back during the reading of the other letters finally came. 12 years of anger, of hurt, of resentment, dissolved into sobs she couldn't control. Michael had loved her. He still loved her. And she had spent more than a decade hating him for a choice he had been forced to make. Jessica? She raised her head and saw Michael standing at the library door. His face was pale, his eyes wide, seeing the letters in her hands. Where did you find that? His voice came out hoarse. Your mother left it for me. She hid it for me to find when I came back. Michael approached slowly as if he were walking toward an injured animal. Did you read everything? Everything. They stared at each other for a moment that seemed eternal. Jessica saw in his face the same pain she felt, the same confusion, the same weight of lost years. I wanted to tell you, he finally said. How? Many times I wanted to call right, show up at your door and explain everything. Why didn't you? Because I was married. Because I didn't have the right to destroy your life again just because mine was destroyed. Michael sat in the armchair, next to her. And because I was afraid you wouldn't believe me. Or worse, that you would believe but couldn't forgive. Jessica looked at the letters in her hands. I don't know if I can forgive. Not now. It's too much to process. I understand. You protected your mother. I understand the choice you made. But that doesn't erase the pain I felt during all these years. It doesn't erase the nights I spent wondering what I had done wrong, why I wasn't enough. Michael closed his eyes. You were always more than enough. You were everything. But you didn't fight for me. Fight against whom? Against my father. Against the threat of committing my mother. He opened his eyes and stared at her. Jessica, I was 22 years old. My mother was going through a serious crisis. My father controlled all the family's money. What could I have done? You could have trusted me. You could have told me the truth and let me choose to stay by your side. And if I had told you, what would you have done? Would you have accepted being the reason my mother was forcibly committed? Jessica was silent. He was right. If she had known about William's blackmail, she probably would have walked away on her own to protect Elizabeth. That doesn't make things less painful, she finally said. I know, and I'm sorry. I'm sorry for all the pain I caused, for all the years we lost, for all the tears you shed because of me. Jessica got up and went to the window. The garden outside was golden in the late afternoon light, the same light that used to filter through the leaves of the oak tree when she was young, and believed that love could overcome any obstacle. "There's something else," she said, showing the golden key. "Your mother said this opens a safe in her room, that it has important documents about your father's debts." Michael stood up too. "Documents? Proof that some of the debts are fraudulent. That can help you save what's left of the family." They went up to the second floor in silence. Elizabeth's room remained preserved exactly as she had left it. Antique furniture, lavender scent still impregnated in the curtains, family photographs scattered around the dresser. Jessica went straight to the old wardrobe and located the small safe hidden behind the clothes. The key fit perfectly. Inside was a folder of documents, bank statements, contracts, and a final letter from Elizabeth. "Michael, my dear son, if you are reading this together with Jessica, it means that fate has finally corrected the mistakes your father and I made. The documents in this safe prove that half of the debts in the family's name are fraudulent. Your father forged your signature on several contracts after you went to London. You are not responsible for these loans. Use this information to save our house. Use it to build the future that you and Jessica deserve. And please, my son, don't repeat my mistakes. Don't let pride and fear destroy your love again. Elizabeth." Michael took the documents with trembling hands. "This could change everything," he murmured. "If these signatures are really fake, you can get rid of half the debts," Jessica completed, "and save the house." They looked at each other, and for the first time since they had met again, Jessica saw genuine hope in his face. "Jessica," he said, approaching her, "I know there's still a lot to talk about, a lot to resolve between us, but I want you to know that everything I felt for you was real. Everything I wrote in that letter is still true." She studied him for a long moment. The man in front of her was still Michael, but he was also a stranger. 12 years had passed. They had become different people. Would it be possible to rebuild something that had been destroyed so long ago? "I need time," she finally said. "I need to process all this, to understand what I feel now that I know the truth." Michael nodded. "I understand, and I'll wait as long as necessary. Don't make promises you might not be able to keep. This one I know I can keep. I've already waited 12 years for you. I can wait a little longer." The sincerity in his voice made her shiver. For a moment she wanted to throw herself into his arms, to forget all the lost years and start over from scratch, but reason spoke louder. "I'll continue with the cataloging work," she said. "It's important to me, regardless of what happens between us." "Of course. And I want you to use these documents to fight for the house. Your mother was right. This place is too important to lose." Michael carefully put the papers back in the folder. "Thank you, Jessica, for finding the letters, for helping me with this for—" "You don't need to thank me." "Yes, I do. You could have left after discovering the truth. You could have decided it was too late to forgive, that the pain had been too great, but you stayed." Jessica looked around Elizabeth's room. "I stayed for her, and for the collection, and because—" She hesitated. "Because maybe there's still something to save." The hope that shone in Michael's eyes was almost painful to see. "Jessica." "No," she said, raising her hand. "Not now. First, let's solve the practical problems. Save the house, finish the cataloging, establish the cultural center. Then we'll see what's left of us." Michael nodded, but she could see the effort he was making not to say anything else, not to try to convince her with words of love that she wasn't ready to hear yet. As they descended the stairs, Jessica felt the weight of the responsibility she had assumed. It wasn't just about cataloging works of art or helping to save a historic house. It was about deciding if there was still room in her heart to forgive 12 years of pain. And for the first time since she had read the letters, she admitted to herself that perhaps there was. Michael's phone rang, interrupting her thoughts. He answered with a serious expression that quickly turned into alarm. "What? When? Are you sure?" He hung up and turned to Jessica. "That was James, my lawyer. Someone broke into his office in the early morning. They took only the files related to the Winters family." Jessica felt a chill down her spine. Do they think it was a common robbery? No, it was very specific. Whoever did it knew exactly what they were looking for. They looked at each other, thinking the same thing. Someone didn't want the truth about William Winters to come to light, and now they knew that they were close to discovering something important. I think you shouldn't stay here alone, Michael said. I'm fine. It's just a coincidence. Jessica, my father made many enemies over the years, people who had an interest in keeping his secrets buried. If they discover we have documents that could incriminate them, he didn't need to finish the sentence. The air between them had changed, now charged with a different tension. Not just the emotional tension of the reunion, but something more, dangerous. Stay here tonight, Michael said. There are plenty of rooms and Martha can prepare one for you. Michael, please, just until we better understand what's happening. Jessica looked at the folder of documents in her hands, documents that could save Michael from ruin, but that could also put them in danger. All right, she finally said, but in separate rooms. Of course. But they both knew that after everything that had been revealed that day, after 12 years of separation and hurt, sleeping under the same roof would be the least of the temptations they would have to face. The room Martha prepared for Jessica was on the second floor, 3 doors down from Michael's room. It was the same room where she had slept a few times during the 3 years of dating, when Sunday afternoons extended too long, and Elizabeth insisted that she stay for dinner. The decoration remained the same, discreet floral wallpaper, white, painted iron bed, antique dresser with oval mirror. Even the lavender scent in the drawers remained unchanged, as if time had stopped in that room. Jessica placed her bag on the bed and stood for a few minutes, just absorbing the familiarity of the environment. 12 years had passed, but she still remembered exactly where everything was. The porcelain lamp on the bedside table, the velvet armchair by the window, the small oratory on the wall with an image of the Virgin Mary. A soft knock on the door took her out of her thoughts. Jessica, it's me. She opened the door and found Michael holding a tray with tea and cookies. He had changed the dress shirt for a grey cotton t-shirt that accentuated the width of his shoulders and made visible a piece of the tattoo that didn't exist when they were young. I thought you might want something warm before sleeping, he said, entering the room after she moved away from the door. Thank you. Michael placed the tray on the bedside table and stood there, clearly reluctant to leave. The room suddenly seemed smaller, more intimate, charged with unresolved memories and tension. You changed your hair, he said suddenly. Jessica instinctively brought her hand to the brown strands that now only reached her shoulders. Cut it 2 years ago. More practical for work. It looks good. It always looks good on you. The simple compliment made her blush like a teenager. It was ridiculous, she knew. She was an adult woman, experienced, who had had other relationships, after Michael. But there was something about the way he looked at her that could still disarm all her defenses. Michael, I know, you need to rest. He headed for the door but stopped before leaving. Jessica, if you hear any strange noise during the night, call me. My room is right there. Are you expecting someone to try to come in here? I don't know what I'm expecting, but I prefer to be cautious. After he left, Jessica locked the door and sat on the bed. The tea was perfumed with lemon balm, exactly as Elizabeth used to prepare to calm the nerves. Even in this, Michael had remembered the details. She drank the tea slowly, watching through the window the garden illuminated by the full moon. Down there was the oak tree where she used to read, the stone bench where she had spent so many happy afternoons. It was as if she was seeing her own youth projected in the garden. When she finished the tea, she took a shower in the small bathroom attached to the room. The hot water helped relax her tense muscles, but couldn't calm her agitated mind. She put on the pajamas she had brought, long pants and a long-sleeved shirt, nothing seductive, and lay down. The mattress was comfortable. The sheets smelled of fabric softener, but she couldn't sleep. Every noise from the old house made her startle. The wind in the windows, the floor that creaked, the pipes that made noise. Familiar sounds that used to reassure her, and now left her on alert. Around 1 in the morning, she gave up trying to sleep. She got up and went to the window, observing the garden bathed in moonlight. It was then that she saw a shadow moving among the trees. Her heart raced. It wasn't a shadow of a branch swaying in the wind. It was a human figure, walking furtively through the garden. Jessica ran to the door and unlocked it silently. The corridor was dark and silent. She walked on tiptoe to Michael's room and knocked softly on the door. "Michael? Michael? Wake up." The door opened almost immediately, as if he hadn't been sleeping either. Michael appeared wearing only pajama pants, his chest bare, his hair disheveled. "What happened?" "There's someone in the garden." His expression immediately became serious. "Where?" "I saw a person walking among the trees near the back fence." Michael went to her room and looked out the window. For a few seconds, they stood side by side, observing the garden. Jessica was hyper-aware of his proximity, of the heat radiating from his skin, of the masculine scent that always made her lose focus. "I don't see anything," he murmured. "I swear I saw someone." "I believe you." Michael moved away from the window. "I'll take a look downstairs. Don't go alone." "Jessica? If someone is trying to get in here, you can't go alone. What if it's more than one person?" Michael studied her for a moment. "Then what do you suggest? We go together or we call the police. If we call the police because of a shadow in the garden, they'll think we're paranoid. Then we go together." Michael nodded. "All right, but you stay behind me the whole time." They descended the stairs in silence, each step seeming to echo in the silent house. Michael grabbed a flashlight in the kitchen and unlocked the back door. The garden was even more silent than the house. Not even the crickets made noise. They walked slowly on the damp grass, Michael illuminating the path with the flashlight. "There," Jessica whispered, pointing to an area near the fence where the grass seemed trampled. Michael examined the spot. With the flashlight, there were footprints in the wet soil, definitely male boots. "Someone was here," he confirmed, "and not long ago." A noise of a branch breaking at the back of the property made them freeze. Michael immediately turned off the flashlight and pulled Jessica behind a tree. "Stay quiet," he whispered in her ear. They remained hidden for a few minutes that seemed like hours. Jessica could feel Michael's heart beating fast against her back, could feel the tension in every muscle of his body. It was a forced intimacy that made her remember other moments when they had been so close. When the silence extended without more suspicious noises, Michael turned on the flashlight again. "I think whoever it was has gone." They returned to the house, but now the environment was completely different. The sense of security had been broken. Someone had invaded the property, and they didn't know why. "I'll sleep on the living room sofa," Michael said when they reached the kitchen. "To be closer to the entrance." "You don't need to—" "Yes, I do. I won't be able to sleep knowing someone might try to come in again." Jessica nodded. The truth was that she also didn't feel safe alone in the room. "Michael," she said when he was already leaving the kitchen, "thank you for protecting me." He turned and looked at her with an intensity that made her shiver. "I will always protect you, Jessica, always." The promise hung in the air between them, loaded with meanings that went far beyond the current situation. Back in the room, Jessica tried to sleep again, but it was impossible. Each noise made her imagine that the intruder had returned. Around 3 in the morning, she gave up and left the room. The house was in absolute silence. She descended the stairs on tiptoe and went to the living room. Michael was lying on the sofa, but clearly awake. "Can't sleep either?" he asked softly. "Too agitated." Michael sat up, making room on the sofa. "Want to keep me company? I promise to behave." Jessica hesitated for a moment, but the large sofa seemed safer than the empty room upstairs. She sat on the other end, maintaining a safe distance. "Are you afraid?" Michael asked. "A little. I don't know if it's because of the intruder or because I'm here with you." The brutal honesty of the response surprised them both. "Jessica, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have said that." "Don't apologize. I understand what you mean." They were silent for a few minutes, just listening to the night noises of the old house. "Can I ask a question?" Jessica finally said. "Of course." "Why did you divorce Heather?" Michael took a while to answer. "Because I could never love her as she deserved. Because every time I looked at her, I saw you. Because it wasn't fair to her to remain married to a man who was in love with someone else. Did Heather know? She suspected. She's an intelligent woman. She knew my heart was elsewhere. Michael turned to look at her. And you? Never got married? Almost, 3 years ago. But at the last moment I realized I was trying to use another man to forget you. It wasn't fair to him. What was his name? Edward, doctor, good man, caring, everything any woman should want. But he wasn't me. The simple phrase hit Jessica hard. He wasn't you. Michael moved a little closer on the sofa. Jessica, I know it's still early. I know you need time to process everything. But I need you to know that these 12 years were the worst of my life. Each day away from you was torture. Don't say that. Why not? It's the truth. Because it makes everything harder. She stood up abruptly. Because it makes me want things that might not be right. Michael stood up too, approaching her slowly. What kind of things? Michael. Tell me. Jessica stared at him, feeling the resistance she had built for 12 years begin to crumble. It makes me want to forgive you. It makes me want to go back in time and recover the years we lost. It makes me want... What? It makes me want to kiss you until I forget all the pain I felt. The confession hung in the air between them. Michael took another step toward her, now close enough to touch her. Then kiss me, he whispered. I can't. Why not? Because if I kiss you now, I won't be able to maintain the distance I need to maintain. Because if I give in again, and you break my heart a second time, I won't survive. Michael raised his hand and gently touched her face. I will never break your heart again, never. How can you be sure? Because now I know what it's like to live without you, and I'd rather die than have to go through that again. The brutal sincerity in his words broke Jessica's last resistance. She moved closer and rested her forehead against his, feeling his warm breath against her face. Michael, I love you, he whispered. I always have. I never stopped loving you, not for a second. The tears Jessica had held back all day finally came. Tears of relief, of pain, of hope. Michael pulled her into his arms, and she allowed herself to stay there, feeling the familiar warmth, the scent she had never forgotten. I love you too, she whispered against his chest. God help me, but I love you too. Michael pulled back enough to look into her eyes. Then why are you crying? Because I'm afraid. I'm afraid I won't be able to forget the pain. I'm afraid that love won't be enough this time. It will be enough. It has to be. He leaned in and kissed her gently, a kiss different from the first one at the hotel. This one was tender, full of promises, charged with 12 years of longing. Jessica responded to the kiss, allowing herself to feel everything she had denied for so long. When they separated, both were breathless. Stay with me tonight, Michael asked. Not to do anything, just to be close. Jessica knew it was dangerous. She knew that being so close to him, especially after the mutual confession of love, was asking for things to get more complicated. But the idea of going back alone to the room after the scare with the intruder and the conversation they had had seemed impossible. Just to sleep, she said. Just to sleep. They lay down on the large sofa, Michael behind her, his arm protectively around her waist. It was a familiar position, one they had used many times when they were young. His body fit perfectly against hers, as if 12 years hadn't passed. Michael. Tell me about London. How was your life there? Michael was silent for a moment. Empty. I built a career, made money, married a good woman. But I always felt like I was playing a role, as if my real life had stayed here, with you. And Heather? Did you like her? I did. She's a special person. But liking is not loving. I'm sorry she got hurt because of us. She understood in the end. She said she always knew I was carrying someone in my heart. In fact, she was the one who suggested the divorce. Jessica turned in his arms to look at him. She suggested it? Said we both deserved a chance to find true love, that she didn't want to spend the rest of her life being nobody's second choice. She was. Right. She was. Always wiser than me. They looked at each other for a moment, faces close, breaths mingling. "Jessica, can I ask you a question?" "Sure. If you had known the truth at the time, what would you have done?" Jessica thought for a moment. "I think I would have stood by your side. I would have faced your father, fought for us. Maybe I would have been foolish enough to believe that love conquers all." "And now? Do you still think love conquers all?" "I don't know. 12 years have made me more realistic, more cautious." "But you're still willing to try?" The question hung in the air between them. Jessica knew that her answer would define the direction they would take from that moment on. "I am," she finally said, but slowly, one step at a time. Michael smiled, and it was the first truly happy smile she had seen on him since they had met again. "We have time," he said. "We have all the time in the world." They settled more comfortably on the sofa, and gradually Jessica felt sleep coming. For the first time in 12 years, she felt completely safe. Not just physically because of the intruder who had threatened the house, but emotionally, as if she could finally let down her guard and simply be herself. She was almost asleep when she heard Michael whisper, "Jessica. Thank you for giving me a second chance." "I haven't given it yet," she murmured sleepily. "You'll have to earn it." Michael chuckled softly. "I intend to do exactly that." The next morning, Jessica woke up alone on the sofa. Michael had placed a blanket over her and left a note on the coffee table. "Went to buy bread for breakfast. Back soon, M." She stretched, feeling more rested than she had been in weeks. Last night's confession had relieved a weight she had been carrying for 12 years. It didn't solve everything, didn't erase the pain of the past, but it was a start. The sound of tires in the driveway made her go to the window. Michael was returning, but he wasn't alone. There was a police car behind his car. Jessica ran to get properly dressed before they came in. When she came down, Michael was talking with 2 police officers in the living room. "Jessica, these are Detectives Wilson and Martinez. I went to file a complaint about yesterday's intruder, but they were already looking for me." Detective Wilson, a middle-aged man with a graying mustache, turned to her. "Ms. Martin, we need to talk to you too. About the break-in at Mr. Davis's office. What does that have to do with me?" "We found something interesting among the documents that weren't stolen," said Detective Martinez, who was younger. "A threatening letter addressed to Mr. Winters, but specifically mentioning you." Michael turned to her, alarmed. "What kind of threat?" Wilson read from a small notebook. "If the seamstress's daughter keeps poking where she shouldn't, she'll discover that some secrets are too dangerous to be revealed." Jessica felt a chill down her spine. Someone knew she was investigating the Winters family's past. Someone who had a lot to lose if the truth came out. "Do you have any idea who might have written this?" Michael asked. "We're still investigating. But it's likely related to your father's business. Mr. William made many enemies over the years, and now those enemies are threatening Jessica. It's a possibility. That's why we came personally. We want both of you to be very careful. Don't go out alone. Keep the doors locked. If you notice anything suspicious, call immediately." After the police left, Michael and Jessica sat in silence for a few minutes. "Maybe you should go back to your apartment," Michael finally said. "No, Jessica, this could be dangerous." "Exactly. And you think I'm going to let you face this alone?" Michael looked at her, surprised. "You don't have any obligation to—" "Yes, I do. We're partners in this now. And partners don't abandon each other when the situation gets tough." The word partners hung in the air between them, loaded with meanings that went far beyond business. Even if it means putting your life at risk? Even then. Michael approached her and held her hands. "Jessica, I couldn't live with myself if something happened to you because of me. And I couldn't live with myself if I ran away now. Not after finding your mother's letters. Not after knowing the truth." She squeezed his hands. "We'll solve this together, like we should have done 12 years ago." Michael brought her hands to his lips and gently kissed her fingers. Together, then. Together. But they both knew that from that moment on, they wouldn't just be fighting to save the house and the Winters family collection. They would be fighting for their own lives. and for the second chance at love they finally had in their hands. The following days passed in a strange routine of forced normality and constant tension. Jessica continued the cataloguing work during the day, immersing herself in the religious art pieces as a way to keep her mind occupied, while Michael dealt with lawyers and investigators trying to unravel who was behind the threats. The nights were the most difficult. After the scare with the intruder, neither of them could sleep alone. They established an undeclared routine. They had dinner together in the kitchen, talked in the living room until late, and then slept on the same sofa, always dressed, always maintaining a respectful distance. But each night, that distance seemed to imperceptibly decrease. On Thursday, Jessica was examining a small sculpture of St. Francis when her cell phone rang. It was Mr. Harris, her lawyer. "Jessica, I need to talk to you urgently. Can you come to my office this afternoon? Did something happen? I received a very strange proposal. Someone wants to buy your studio for double the market value, in cash." Jessica felt a chill down her spine. "Who?" "I don't know. The interested party wants to remain anonymous, but the proposal came with a very clear suggestion that you accept and leave New York for a while." "That's a disguised threat." "That's exactly what I thought. Don't accept this meeting alone. Bring someone with you." Jessica hung up and ran to find Michael, who was in the office talking to James on the phone. When she told him about the call, his face turned grim. "They're trying to get you away from here." "But why? What do they think I might discover?" Michael looked at the folder with the documents they had found in Elizabeth's safe. "Maybe the answer is in there. Let's review everything again, document by document." They spent the entire afternoon examining each paper, each contract, each bank statement. Michael knew the family business better and could explain the context of many transactions, but there were some that even he didn't understand. "Look at this," Jessica said, pointing to a series of bank transfers. "Your mother highlighted these. Operations, specifically. They were always made on the same day of the month during the last 5 years of your father's life." Michael examined the numbers. "These are large amounts, and this account number, I don't recognize it. And there's more. Look at these notes on the side." Jessica showed a series of handwritten initials by Elizabeth. HB, RS, MT. They seem like people's initials. HB could be Heather Bennett, my ex-wife, but RS and MT... Michael frowned, thinking, wait, RS could be Robert Smith. Who is Robert Smith? He was the family's accountant, worked with my father for 20 years, died in a car accident 3 years ago. What kind of accident? Strange, now that I think about it. He was on his way to a meeting with us in London when the car overturned on an empty road. The police said it was because of the rain, but you didn't believe it. At the time, I didn't think much about it. I was very focused on the problems in my marriage. But now, Michael picked up the phone. "I'm going to call Detective Wilson. He needs to know about this." While Michael was talking to the police, Jessica continued examining the documents. There was something that bothered her, a pattern she couldn't fully identify. The bank transfers always happened after certain business meetings, as if they were payments for some kind of service. "Michael," she said when he hung up, "I think your father was paying bribes." "What do you mean?" "These transfers, they always happen after major government contracts. Look here, contract for supplying equipment to public hospitals, transfer of $200,000. Contract for renovation of public schools, transfer of $300,000. Michael sat heavily in the chair. My God, he was buying public contracts. And if Robert Smith discovered it and threatened to tell, they killed him. Michael ran his hands through his hair. "Jessica, this is much worse than we imagined. We're not just dealing with tax evasion. We're talking about large-scale corruption, murder." Michael's phone rang. It was Detective Wilson. "Mr. Winters, I have bad news. Mr. Harris suffered an accident an hour ago, hit and run outside his office." Michael went pale. "How is he?" "Alive, but in serious condition. And Mr. Winters, the folder with the documents about your family was in his briefcase. It's disappeared." Michael hung up and turned to Jessica. Harris was hit. They took the documents. Jessica felt her legs weaken. My God, because of me. If I hadn't asked him to analyze the proposal. It's not your fault. Michael pulled her into his arms. It's my fault, my family's, all this rot my father left. We have to get out of here, she said against his chest. If they were capable of trying to kill Mr. Harris, they won't hesitate to do something to us. Where to? I don't know. Somewhere safe while we decide what to do. Michael pulled away and looked into her eyes. Jessica, I have an idea, but it's risky. What idea? We can try a trap. Make them think we have more evidence than we actually do. Force them to expose themselves. How? I'll call the newspapers. I'll say I have documents that prove the involvement of politicians and businessmen in corruption schemes with my father, that I'll hand everything over to the police tomorrow. Jessica looked at him as if he had gone mad. Michael, that's suicide. If you do that, they'll come after us with everything. Exactly. But they'll also become desperate. Desperate people make mistakes, and the police will be prepared. And if the police can't protect us? Michael held her face between his hands. Then at least we'll die knowing we tried to do the right thing, that we didn't let the criminals who killed Robert Smith and tried to kill Mr. Harris go unpunished. Jessica closed her eyes, feeling the weight of the decision. She could flee, disappear, start her life over somewhere else. But that would mean abandoning Michael again, and this time, by her own choice. All right, she finally said. But we do it together, until the end. Michael kissed her, an intense kiss loaded with fear and determination. Together until the end. They spent the rest of the afternoon planning. Michael called 3 different newspapers, giving explosive statements about corruption in the Winters family and promising to deliver evidence the next morning. Jessica made backups of all the documents they still had, keeping copies in different places. When night came, the tension was palpable. They barely ate dinner, almost in silence, each lost in their own thoughts. Jessica, Michael said when they were washing the dishes, if anything happens to me... No. Listen, if anything happens, I want you to take that envelope that's in the library safe and disappear. There's enough money for you to start over anywhere in the world. Michael, stop. Promise you'll do it. Jessica turned to face him, her hands still wet from the dishes. I promise one thing only, that we'll get through this together. Both of us. Alive. Michael pulled her into a tight hug. How can you be so strong? Because I have something to fight for now. I have you. They kissed again, but this time the kiss was different, more urgent, more desperate. As if they knew it could be the last one. Jessica, Michael murmured against her lips, if this is our last night, it's not. But if it is, I don't want to waste it. I don't want to spend another night just sleeping next to you, pretending I'm not crazy with desire for you. The raw confession made her shiver. She felt the same thing, the same urgent need to be close to him, to feel they were still alive, that they still had something to lose. Michael, I know there's still a lot to resolve between us. I know you still need time to fully trust me again, but... He hesitated. But if something happens tomorrow and I die without having touched you again, without having loved you again... Jessica put her finger on his lips, silencing him. Then don't let that happen. She took him by the hand, leaving the kitchen, climbing the stairs. Her heart was beating so hard it seemed like it would explode in her chest. It wasn't just physical desire, although that was overwhelming after 12 years of forced abstinence. It was the need to reconnect, to erase the lost years, to feel complete again. In Michael's room, she stopped near the bed and turned to face him. The soft light from the bedside lamp created golden shadows on his face, accentuating each line, each contour she had memorized years ago. "Are you sure?" he asked, approaching slowly. In response, she began to unbutton her own blouse. Michael watched each movement as if he were memorizing the moment. When she finished, he approached and gently touched her exposed skin. "You're even more beautiful," he murmured. "I'm older. You're more of a woman, stronger, more amazing." He kissed her neck, and Jessica closed her eyes, losing herself in the familiar sensation. His hands roamed her body with a reverence that made her shiver. It was as if he were rediscovering. Every inch, every curve, every sensitive spot he still remembered to touch. "Michael," she whispered when he moved away to take off his own shirt. "What?" "I missed you. Every day for 12 years I missed you." The raw confession seemed to break the last barrier between them. Michael kissed her with a passion that bordered on desperation, and she responded with the same intensity. There was no more room for hesitation, for doubts, for fear of what might happen the next day. When they finally lay on the bed, naked in each other's arms, it was as if time hadn't passed. Their bodies still fit perfectly, still knew each other's rhythms, still knew exactly how to give and receive pleasure. But there was also a difference, a maturity that didn't exist when they were young. They made love not just with their bodies, but with their souls. Each touch was a promise. Each kiss was a declaration. Each moan was a confession of love that had resisted 12 years of separation. Afterward, lying intertwined. In the rumpled sheets, Jessica traced lazy circles on Michael's chest. "I don't regret it," she said softly. "Neither do I. I would never regret loving you. Even knowing that tomorrow, especially knowing that tomorrow could be our last day together." They were silent for a time, just enjoying the proximity, the warmth of each other, the sense of completeness they had lost and finally found again. "Michael?" Jessica said when he was almost asleep. "If we get through this, if we solve all the problem, yes, I want to try again. Us. For real." Michael turned to look at her, his eyes shining in the darkness. "Seriously?" "Seriously. I wasted 12 years of my life hating you. I don't want to waste even one more day." Michael kissed her softly. "I love you so much it hurts." "Me too." They fell asleep, intertwined, for the first time in 12 years, completely at peace in each other's arms. But both their sleep was interrupted several times by noises that could just be the wind or could be something much more sinister. The next morning, Jessica woke up alone in bed. She heard voices from downstairs and quickly got dressed to go. Down, Michael was in the kitchen talking with Detective Wilson and 2 more police officers. "Jessica," Michael said when he saw her, "we have news." Wilson turned to her. "Ms. Martin, we arrested 3 men during the night trying to enter the property. They had weapons and professional equipment. They clearly came to do more than just intimidate." "Who are they?" "We're still interrogating them, but one of them has already talked. They were hired by a security company that has connections with some of the politicians mentioned in the documents you found." Michael approached and held her hand. "Jessica, everything's going to be all right. They're in jail. We have police, protection, and now the investigation will expand to include all the people involved in my father's schemes. And Mr. Harris? He's better. Woke up this morning and has already given a statement. He confirmed he was intimidated before the hit and run." Jessica sat in a chair, feeling relief and exhaustion at the same time. "Is it over?" "The dangerous part, yes," said Wilson. "But the judicial process will be long. You'll have to testify. You may be called several times. And Mr. Winters, depending on what else we discover about your father's business, may face some legal complications." Michael nodded. "I understand, but I'll cooperate with everything. It's time to clean up the family name." After the police left, Michael and Jessica were alone in the kitchen. The adrenaline of the last few days was finally dropping, and they both felt strangely empty. "And now?" Jessica asked. "Now we rebuild. The house, the family's reputation, our life together." "Our life together?" Michael knelt beside her chair. "Jessica Martin, I know it's too soon to talk about this, I know. We still have a lot to resolve. But I don't want to waste any more time. I don't want to live even one day without you. Michael, marry me. Again. The right way this time." The unexpected proposal left her speechless. "You're crazy. We just really met again last night." "I am crazy. Crazy in love with you. Crazy wanting to wake up every day by your side. Crazy wanting to grow old with you." Jessica looked at the man kneeling in front of her. The same man she had loved at 20, but now more mature, more determined, more aware of the value of what they had. What if it doesn't work out? It will work out. How can you be sure? Because this time there are no more secrets between us. This time there's no one trying to separate us. This time it's just you and me, choosing to be together. Jessica felt tears burning in her eyes. Michael, you don't have to answer now, just think about the possibility. She held his face between her hands. I don't need to think, the answer is yes. Yes, yes, I'll marry you. Yes, I want to try again. Yes, I want our second chance. Michael stood up and kissed her, spinning her. In the air. When he put her down, they were both laughing and crying at the same time. There's something I need to tell you, Jessica said suddenly. What? She hesitated, the words stuck in her throat. There was something she had discovered 3 days ago, something that would change everything between them again. But looking at Michael's happy face, at the hope shining in his eyes, she couldn't speak. Later, she said. I'll tell you later. But deep in her heart, she knew that what she had to tell would be the ultimate test of the love they declared to have for each other, because she was pregnant, and the baby she carried in. Her womb would be the final proof that some loves are truly capable of transcending any obstacle. The question that tormented her was, would Michael be happy with the news, or would he think she was trying to tie him down through a pregnancy? There was only one way to find out, and that time was coming faster than she expected. 3 weeks had passed since Michael had asked Jessica to marry him, and she still hadn't found the courage to tell him about the pregnancy. Each morning she woke up with nausea. Each afternoon, she felt the inexplicable fatigue. Each night she noticed the small changes in her body. The truth became harder to hide. Michael was radiant, planning the future with contagious energy. He had hired an event company to organize an intimate wedding at the mansion itself, was supervising the renovations for the inauguration of the cultural center, and in his spare time helped Jessica with the final cataloging of the collection. He talked about honeymoon plans, about where they would live after the wedding, about children they would have one day. Each time he mentioned children, Jessica felt her stomach turn. Not from nausea, but from pure anxiety. That Thursday morning she was in the bathroom of the mansion when nausea completely overcame her. Michael knocked on the door when he heard the sounds. Jessica, are you okay? I'm fine, she answered, trying to control her voice. Just a bit of queasiness. Open the door, let me see if you have a fever. Jessica looked at her reflection in the mirror. She was pale, with dark circles under her eyes, her lips colorless. There was no way to hide it much longer. Jessica? She opened the door and found Michael with a worried expression. You look terrible. I'm going to call a doctor. You don't need to. Of course I do. You've been like this for days. Michael put his hand on her forehead. No fever, but... Michael, I know what it is. You do? What is it? Jessica took a deep breath, knowing there was no more delaying it. I'm pregnant. The silence that followed seemed eternal. Michael remained completely still, his hand still on her forehead, his eyes wide, processing the information. Pregnant, he repeated, as if testing how the word sounded. About 6 weeks, approximately. Michael took a step back, then another. The expression on his face was unreadable, and that terrified Jessica. 6 weeks, he said, making mental calculations, since the first night we slept together. Yes. And how long have you known? The question came out harsher than he probably intended, but Jessica noticed the change in tone. For a week. A week! Michael ran his hands through his hair. And you didn't tell me. I was trying to find the right way. The right way? He turned to face her, and Jessica saw something in his eyes that made her step back. Jessica, I asked you to marry me 3 weeks ago. You accepted knowing you were pregnant. No, when you asked I didn't know yet. But when you found out, you didn't think it was important to tell me. The implicit accusation in the question hit her like a slap. You think I was trying to deceive you? I don't know what to think. Michael, for God's sake, it's our child. Our child that you hid from me for a whole week. The discussion was rapidly escalating to dangerous territory. Jessica felt tears burning in her eyes. "I was afraid, okay? I was afraid of your reaction, afraid you would think I was trying to force you into marriage." "And weren't you?" The question was like a punch to the stomach. Jessica stared at him, incredulous. "How can you ask that? How can you think I would be capable of—" "Jessica, you yourself said you needed time to trust me again. And suddenly, after one night of sex, you're pregnant and accept my marriage proposal. What conclusion should I draw? The conclusion that you love me, that we love each other." The tears were now flowing freely down her face, that after 12 years apart, fate is giving us a complete second chance. Or the conclusion that you found a guaranteed way to keep me in your life. The accusation was too brutal. Jessica felt something break inside her chest. "You really believe that? After everything we've been through, after I stayed by your side when my life was in danger, you really think I would be capable of using a pregnancy to manipulate you?" Michael didn't answer immediately, but the hesitation was answer enough. "See," Jessica said, her voice coming out cold and controlled. "Thank you for making your opinion of my character very clear." She tried to pass by him, but Michael held her arm. "Jessica, wait. Let me go. I didn't mean to say—" "Yes, you did. And it's fine, Michael. At least now I know what you really think of me." Jessica broke free and went to the room where she had been sleeping for the past few weeks. She grabbed her suitcase and began throwing clothes inside. Michael appeared at the door. "What are you doing?" "What does it look like I'm doing? I'm leaving." "Jessica, stop. Let's talk about this." "There's nothing to talk about. You made it very clear that you think I'm capable of deliberately getting pregnant to emotionally blackmail you." I was shocked. I spoke without thinking. "No, Michael, you spoke exactly what you were thinking." Jessica closed the suitcase with more force than necessary. "And that shows me that you really don't know me, even after everything." Michael approached. "Please don't leave, not again. This time I'm the one choosing to leave." "And the baby?" Jessica stopped packing and faced him. "The baby is mine, my responsibility. You made it very clear that you consider it a manipulation on my part." "I didn't say that." "Yes, you did. And you know what's worse? It's that for a moment I really thought you had changed, that you had matured enough to understand that love isn't about control or distrust." Michael sat on the bed, shoulders hunched. "Jessica, please. I love you." "No, Michael. You love the idea of me, the memory of what we had 12 years ago. But you don't know me for real, because if you did, you would know that I would never use a child as a weapon." "I know. You're right. I know. Knowing and feeling are different things." Jessica finished packing the suitcase and headed for the door. Michael got up quickly. "Where are you going?" "To my life. The life I built alone and that I can continue building alone." "And the cultural center? The collection?" "I'll finish the work professionally, but our personal story ends here." Michael seemed to panic. "Jessica, don't do this, not because of an argument." "It's not an argument, Michael. It's a revelation about what you really think of me deep in your heart." She passed by him and descended the stairs. Michael followed, her desperate. "Jessica, stop. Let's solve this. We already have." She reached the front door and turned to look at him one last time. Michael was standing in the middle of the living room, his face distressed, his hands extended as if he wanted to hold her but didn't know how. "I wanted it to work out," she said, her voice breaking. "I wanted so much for it to work out." "It can work out. Let me fix this." "Some things can't be fixed, Michael. Some words can't be taken back." Jessica left and closed the door behind her, not looking back even when she heard Michael shouting her name. In the taxi taking her back to her apartment, she finally allowed herself to cry completely. 12 years waiting for that moment, 3 weeks living a dream, and everything had crumbled because of the same thing that had separated them before: lack of trust. During the next 3 days, Michael called incessantly. Jessica didn't answer any of the calls. He sent flowers, which she returned. He sent letters, which she didn't open. He appeared at the door of her apartment several times, But she didn't come down to talk to him. Rachel tried to convince her, to at least listen to what he had to say. Jess, the man is desperate. He's spent the last 2 days camped on the sidewalk outside your building. His problem. Don't you think you're being a bit dramatic? Jessica turned to face her friend. Dramatic? Rach, he practically accused me of getting pregnant on purpose. To force a marriage. How am I not supposed to be offended? He was shocked. People say stupid things when they're shocked. Not this stupid. Not this kind of accusation. Rachel sighed. And the baby? He has the right to know his own child. He does, and I won't prevent him. But that doesn't mean I have to go back to him. You still love him. It wasn't a question. It was a statement, and Jessica couldn't deny it. Loving isn't enough, Rach. I learned that in the worst possible way. On the 4th day, Martha appeared at Jessica's apartment. Miss Jessica, the young master is very bad. Martha, I can't. Just listen. He's not eating, not sleeping. He spends all day walking around the house like a lost soul, and he talks to himself, rehearsing what he's going to say to you. Not my problem. Yes, it is, because you're carrying Mrs. Elizabeth's grandchild. And Mrs. Elizabeth would never forgive you for depriving her of knowing this grandchild. The mention of Elizabeth hit Jessica hard. Martha was right. Elizabeth had been like a mother to her, and she would be devastated if she knew Jessica was preventing Michael from knowing his own child because of wounded pride. Did he send you here? No, ma'am, he doesn't even know I came, but someone has to make these two stubborn people understand each other. That afternoon, Jessica made a decision. She went to the mansion, not to reconcile with Michael, but to establish the rules about how they would raise the child together, even if separated. Michael opened the door personally. He had deep, dark circles, unshaven, and seemed to have lost weight. Jessica, he said, as if he couldn't believe she was there, we need to talk about the baby. Michael stepped aside to let her in. Do you want coffee? Water? No, this won't take long. They sat in the living room, maintaining a careful distance. Michael, I came here because you have the right to know your child, but I want to make some things clear. Jessica, let me speak. She took a deep breath. You will have full access to the baby. Visits, weekends, vacations, everything a separated father normally has. But between us two, it's over. Definitely. Michael stared at her for a long moment. Is that what you want? It's what has to be. And if I say I was wrong, that I said something unforgivable because I was scared, I would say it's too late. Jessica, I know I was an idiot. I know I hurt you in a way that might be unforgivable, but... He got up and went to the table where several papers were scattered. There's something you need to see. He came back with a sheet of paper and handed it to her. It was a medical exam. What is this? I had a vasectomy 4 years ago. Jessica read the document, not understanding what Michael was trying to say. I don't understand. Jessica, I can't have children. For 4 years I haven't been able to have children. The world seemed to stop. Jessica read the exam again, slowly processing what it meant. But yet, then... So when you told me you were pregnant, the first thing that went through my head wasn't joy. It was confusion. And then... Michael sat next to her. And then it was a mixture of impossible hope with the certainty that you were lying. Jessica stared at him, still trying to process the information. You thought I was lying about the pregnancy? For a few seconds, yes, until I remembered that you didn't know about the vasectomy, and then you thought I was trying to deceive you with someone else's child. Michael closed his eyes. For a few terrible seconds, yes. My God, Michael. I know it's unforgivable, but Jessica... He held her hands. What if it's true? What if what if the baby is really mine? Jessica looked at the exam again. How would that be possible? I don't know. Procedure failure, natural reversal. It happens even if it's rare. Would you take another test? I already did yesterday. Michael pulled another paper from his pocket, and it seems there was a partial reversal. It's possible I can have children again. Jessica held the two. Exams, trying to understand the magnitude of what was happening. Michael, this doesn't change what you said. It doesn't change the fact that your first reaction was to accuse me. I know. And I'll carry that guilt for the rest of my life. But Jessica, his voice broke. What if this baby is really a miracle? What if it's the universe's way of saying we're meant to be together? You can't base a relationship on a pregnancy. I'm not basing it on that. I'm basing it on the fact that I love you more than my own life, that these last 4 days without you have been worse than the 12 years we spent apart. Jessica got up and went to the window, observing the garden where everything had begun. How can I trust you again? How can I be sure that the next time something unexpected happens, you won't accuse me again? Michael approached but didn't touch her. Because I'll spend the rest of my life proving that I deserve your trust. Because I'll do therapy, I'll work. On my demons, I'll do whatever it takes to be the man you deserve. Michael, Jessica, I know I don't have the right to ask this. I know I've already ruined everything twice, but... He knelt behind her. Give me one last chance, not for me, not for the baby, but for us, for everything we've always been to each other. Jessica turned and looked at the man kneeling on the floor. She saw absolute sincerity in his eyes, but she also saw pain, fear, and a vulnerability he had never shown before. If I give this chance and you disappoint me again, I won't disappoint. How can you be sure? Because there's nothing more important in my life than you and this baby. Because I understood that I can lose everything, the house, the money, the reputation, but I can't lose you again. Jessica studied his face for a long moment. She saw the 22-year-old man she had loved, but she also saw the 34-year-old man who was there, offering not just love, but growth. One last chance, she finally said. Michael closed his eyes, as if he couldn't believe what he had heard. Really? One last chance, but with conditions, any condition. Couples therapy every week, I accept. And you'll have to regain my trust from scratch. It won't be easy, it won't be quick. I know. And if you disappoint me again, it's over forever. No discussion, no second chances. Michael stood up and held her, face between his hands. I won't disappoint. I swear on my mother's memory. He kissed her softly, and Jessica felt the last resistance dissolve. It wasn't a fairy tale ending. It was better than that. It was real, complicated, but genuine. Michael? Yes. I love you, but if you mess up again, I'll perform the vasectomy myself. Michael laughed, and it was her first genuine laugh in days. Noted. 6 months later, the Elizabeth Winters Cultural Center was inaugurated in a ceremony that brought together the best of New York society. Jessica, now 5 months pregnant with a pronounced round belly, guided visitors through the collection she had catalogued with such care. Michael observed her from a distance, talking with sponsors and journalists. They had gotten married 2 weeks before, in an intimate ceremony in the mansion's garden, with only the closest friends present. Jessica had worn her grandmother's dress, Michael had cried during the vows, and Martha had made a 3-tiered cake that was more beautiful than any artwork in the collection. She's radiant, said Rachel, approaching Michael. She is. And you, how are you feeling? Michael smiled. Complete. For the first time in my life, truly complete. The couple's therapy had been fundamental. 12 intense sessions where they dissected not just the recent problems, but all the hurt accumulated. Over 12 years, Michael had learned to deal with his fears of abandonment, and Jessica had learned to express her needs without fear of being rejected. The baby, confirmed by tests as really being Michael's child, had become the symbol of the second chance they both deserved, a girl who would be born in December and whom they had already decided to name Elizabeth. Michael, Jessica approached, her hand on her belly. The little one is kicking a lot. I think she liked the compliments about Mommy's work. Michael placed his hand on her belly, feeling the movements of his daughter. She's going to be an artist like her mother. Or stubborn like her father. Probably. Both. They stood there for a moment in the middle of the party that celebrated not just the inauguration of the cultural center, but the victory of love over all adversities. Jessica, Yes, thank you. For what? For not giving up on us, for giving me one last chance, for carrying our daughter. Jessica leaned on his chest, listening to the familiar sound of his heartbeat. Thank you for being worth it. I will always be worth it for both of you. When the party ended and the last guests had left, Michael and Jessica remained alone in the garden, sitting on the bench under the oak tree where everything had begun years ago. You know what I was thinking? Jessica said. What? Your mother would be proud of the cultural center of us, of everything. Michael looked at the illuminated house, now transformed into something that would preserve the family's memory, but also serve the community. She would be especially happy to know that we managed to find each other again, even after so much lost time. Especially after so much lost time. Jessica settled more comfortably in his arms. Michael? I love you. I love you, too. Forever? Michael kissed the top of her head. Forever and for every life we might have after this one. The full moon illuminated the garden where two people had found each other again after 12 years, had faced real and imaginary dangers, had lost and found each other again, and now, finally, they were home. Home in each other's arms. Home, in the place where their story had begun. Home in the certainty that some loves are truly eternal. Little Elizabeth kicked once more, as if wanting to participate in the moment, and her parents laughed, knowing she would be raised in a house full of love, art, and stories about second chances that really work out. And when the stars appeared in the New York sky, illuminating the mansion that was now a cultural center, the century-old oak tree that had witnessed the first love between Jessica and Michael, and that now witnessed the definitive new beginning, swayed gently in the night breeze, as if it were applauding.